Hello and welcome to The Drum. I'm Steve Cannane. Coming up, why voters aren't buying Labor's budget hard sell, what today's equal pay ruling means for female workers, and why the Taliban has decided to join the Twitter revolution. Our panel tonight, Fiona Ellis-Jones from ABC News Radio, former Liberal MP Bruce Baird, and in Melbourne, academic and writer Tim Soutphommasane. Well, Julia Gillard and her front bench team have been out and about selling the budget today as the government battles another poor showing in the latest opinion polls. Both the News poll and the Nielsen poll have the coalition well ahead of Labor on the two-party preferred and primary vote. And both polls show voters have failed to warm to the budget. Only 37% of those interviewed by News poll thought it was good. 44% approved in the Nielsen survey. The Prime Minister wasn't keen to dwell on the poll results when she faced the media today.
Look, my focus is on getting the job done that the economy needs today and that Australians need done today. And that focus is about having a strong economy, delivering more opportunities for all. That's what the budget is about, that's what the government is about, and we'll keep doing that work.
And after first saying it was his policy not to comment on the polls, the opposition leader Tony Abbott did that, sharing his thoughts on where the government is going wrong.
I think what we've got is a Prime Minister who plainly isn't listening. The families of Australia are under pressure, and the working families of 2007 are the forgotten families of 2011. And I think it's high time that the Prime Minister stopped making excuses for bad policy.
Tim, according to the News poll, it's the worst reaction to a budget in 16 years. Why has it got such a bad response?
Well, I suspect that much has to do with the fact that this was the first budget in 9 years that didn't involve a tax cut. There's been a culture of complacency and entitlement that's been built over the last decade over middle-class welfare. I think naturally Labor will be disappointed with some of these polling results, but most economic experts and commentators regard it as a safe and good budget. And I think it lays down some very strong foundation stones for an agenda that Labor can build around work, skills and welfare reform. I think there is an element too, just in terms of historical factors, with the very poor response that Labor has received from the public, which is that the public has always been very sceptical about Labor and economic management. But there was a very interesting take in today's Australian by George Megalogenis that actually shows that far from the profligate spendthrifts that many people paint Labor treasurers out to be, Labor treasurers have historically over the last 30 years in fact been more frugal.
Bruce, what do you put the negative response down to?
I just think the government's in deep trouble. They're very unpopular. No matter what they try to do, it's seen badly. And I think it's, I disagree with Tim. I think it's more to do with their unpopularity. I thought the budget wasn't bad. It wasn't spectacular, but it certainly addressed some of the issues in terms of middle-class welfare, showing they were prepared to take some tough decisions. But they're being pounded by talkback radio stations, News Limited, are certainly giving them a workover.
Do you think they're getting pounded unfairly?
Well, look, I mean, they're just not getting any traction. And when they come out before the election saying there'll be no carbon tax, and there is, it's obviously fertile ground for the shock jocks to get into. And in terms of, you know, the emissions trading scheme being delayed for 3 years and suddenly it's on the agenda again, I just think that people are saying, look, we're sick of this. We're losing credibility, losing faith in the Prime Minister and the government. I think so that's this malaise that's there. They're disillusioned with the government. I think people also haven't quite got over the fact with Julia Gillard, what she did to Kevin Rudd. It's a bit like Malcolm Fraser, who never quite got over the dismissal through Sir John Kerr.
Fiona, why do you think it's been so poorly received?
Look, I think Bruce is right. They certainly have taken a pounding, but I think a lot of it has to do with the way Tony Abbott has effectively stayed on message throughout the last 2 weeks. He's directed conversation and the public sphere towards the carbon tax. And even with the budget, as Tim and Bruce said, most economists did say it was a responsible, reasonable budget given the economic times. But Tony Abbott has really turned public conversation back to honing in on these families that earn over $100,000 $250,000, being the new rich, and really turned it into a war, a class war, in effect. Tony, I think, opposingly, Wayne Swan has had difficulty selling this budget. I think a lot of that also has to do with the way Julia Gillard really directed public attention back to the asylum seeker issue, especially knowing that she announced this Malaysia deal, 2 days before poor Wayne Swan was due to hand down his budget, something that he'd been working on and, like we all said, had been really readily expected from the economists.
Tim, Fiona was mentioning Tony Abbott's role there. Do you think Tony Abbott's got the government spooked? Because some commentators are saying that the government's talking more about Tony Abbott than they are about their policies and how they're governing.
Well, there's no doubt that Labor should be worried about the fact that Tony Abbott managed to get away with a non-reply to the budget. He didn't even respond to the budget in his formal response to Parliament. It's akin to a very audacious slap in the face and to thumbing the nose at the usual rules of political engagement.
It worked very well, though, Tim, didn't it? I mean, I was down there for both of them. And I heard Julia Gillard speak in the Great Hall, and I thought she was extremely good explaining the budget. But from my point of view, it was the best speech that Tony Abbott has done in terms of in the Parliament, on the budget. He broke all the rules, but it certainly was smart politically.
Yeah, there's no